All right, assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. Inshallah, we're going to continue with the next part. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wa salatu wa salamu ala nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi sallam ajma'in. So I'm gonna do this presentation, and I will tell you straight up, this is basically about clearing misconceptions about building wealth, and specifically we're talking about investing, and I'm going to speak more so about investing in the stock market. Okay. Brother Ashraf, we wanted him to go first because he kind of lays that groundwork. A lot of what I'm going to talk about is more advice, personal advice. I will tell you right now, I'm not a scholar in this. I'm someone, most of my life I've invested. I worked a lot with people, so that's kind of the position that I'm coming from. The idea for me anyway, what I tend to focus on is more so the youth, but anyone. But I tend to hone in on the youth because I feel like they are the ones who have the greatest potential to build the most wealth, and I'll explain why. So the first thing, disclaimer here, anything I say, there again, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just a brother, just like everyone else. I just have experience doing this myself. So don't take anything that I say as legal advice. If you need that stuff, talk to a lawyer. If you want to know about something dealing with housing, we did provide a brochure for what's it called? Guidance Residential. Yes, they have a representative here. There are other places as well, but there's a representative that works with this community in particular. So that's why we provided them. And of course, Brother Huda and other people will bring and introduce you to other companies as well. But this is just a little bit about myself, so you can kind of know who I am. My related passion there again, just investor ever since, I don't know, I think I did my first investment probably at the age of like 19. I didn't know what I was doing. I just somebody told me, hey, this is what you need to do. And that's what I did. And it just kind of grew from there until, years later, you say, okay, you see the benefit of it after, when I was 19, I didn't see it. Right. So wealth building is also something I do take pretty serious. And by trade, I'm an engineer, architect, computer engineer and architect and so on and so forth. My education, MBA from certificate in management, Master's of Science in Information Assurance. I have a bachelor's degree in Arabic language and also a bachelor of science in information systems management. That's educational background. Currently working on a bridge to master's program at the Islamic University, or IOU, Islamic University, run by Dr. Bilal Phillips. Used to be out of Qatar, now in Gambia. Related experience, project management professional dealing with finances and scheduling and also money, right? A property owner, business owner, investor, done asset management. I'm also an educator and I also run a family business. So that's kind of a little bit about me. The biggest thing I want everyone to take away from this is the idea is to build that investor mindset. I can say that unless someone would have spoken to me about this, I never would have known really what investing was. And it's amazing to me how I talk to people who are very educated in my field. They're engineers and architects, right? Know nothing about it, right? As one guy I was speaking to a few years ago, this guy, he's an engineer. He's a real smart guy. Somehow we started talking about investing. He said, I have no clue what you're talking about, right? And he said, I just kind of, just whatever, my money is what it is, right? And I said, that's amazing, right? For you to make the money that you make, but you don't even think about investing. So that's the problem, is he just doesn't have that mindset. So you can make a lot of money, but if you don't know how to build wealth, right, it can be problematic. So first thing I want to talk about is what is investing. And this is just my personal view, and what is not investing. We got a lot of terms out there. And I think in talking with people, especially it can be young or old, people get confused about these terms. So in a broad sense, right, investing, we're taking some asset that we have, and we are trying to use that resource to generate more benefits, some positive benefit for ourselves, some value for ourselves. Okay. And we do this with many things. We do it with our time. We do it with our spirituality. You invest in yourself, right? You want to improve on yourself, make yourself better. People work out, right? You invest, you go to the gym and you work out, that helps with your health and gives you longevity. So when you think about it, we're constantly investing. We just have to take that same mindset and apply it to finances, right? When we talk about financial investing, we're talking about money, right? Wealth, money, and we put it in certain places with the hopes or expectations that it will grow, right? And we're talking about Islamic investing, so we want to do it in this in a halal way, and that's where Brother Ashraf came in. Okay. So that was the general idea of what investing is. Spending versus investing. There's a difference. And I say this because sometimes when you start to talk to people about investing and you say, hey, why don't you go ahead and buy this stock? They're like, man, they look at it as buying, right? I'm spending money. It's like, no, you're not, right? You're investing money. You have to change your thinking. Okay. And you'll see that it really has an effect on people. It keeps people from actually buying or investing. I don't want to spend any money. So spending, you're actually trading money, right, for something that is usually going to decrease in value over time. Okay. Think of a car, right? Tennis shoes or whatever it is, right? You go out, you spend, $20,000, $30,000 on a car, right? As soon as you drive it off the lot, after a while, the car it just decreases in value. So you spend $20,000, a year or two later, the car's worth, $15,000, right? It just goes down in value. So you have not really increased, right? So and there's not really a difference of opinion, but it depends on how the car is used as well. If you use the car for your livelihood, then maybe that is an investment. So you have to kind of look at it that way. But in general, spending is you're giving money and you're getting something back, but that thing tends to decrease in value and it doesn't raise the value of your initial investment. Okay. There again, investing. Think about something like real estate, right? You buy land, property, or something like that in a good environment. One thing about land and property that you can always generally see is that even if the property is the value of that property is low, if you give enough time, right, gentrification, everything else happens. Guess what happens? The value of that property goes back up. It just takes time, right? So that's one of the big differences is that investing is one thing, it takes time, right? You're not going to reap the rewards from it right away. It may take a few decades. So spending and investing, two different things. Okay. Don't get that confused. If you're buying stock or whatever, don't look at it as spending. Look at it as investing for the future. Saving versus investing. Okay. Another big difference. A lot of people feel like and it's not bad to save, right? Some people say I'm just putting money away, but they don't invest. It's good to put money away, but I would say my personal experience and what I tend to do with savings is used for emergencies, right? I kind of assess my situation in life and I say at any given time, I may need cash like tomorrow or today, right? Can I get that cash today? That's what a savings account is for, right? A savings account, and of course, dealing with American banks, savings accounts, they're always going to give you some interest back, some riba, right? It's a very small percentage, but the return on it, it's haram, but the return on it is going to be very little. So you put the money away for something that you're going to use in an emergency, right? And you have to assess that yourself. For you young people, you just bought a car, you need your car to go to work or whatever it is, right? If your car breaks down tomorrow, will you be able to still go to work? Right? In that case, you need to think about it. Do I have some money set aside so in case my car does break down, I can get it fixed right away? For older people who may have a home, right? People who get older and you start to have health issues. Sometimes that comes into play. Do I have money set aside that I can get to right away that I can spend or use to spend and take care of emergencies? Investing, on the other hand, is a little bit different. You're not trying to use the money right away. You put the money somewhere, you let it sit, you let it grow, and it takes sometimes decades, right? You have to be very patient with that. It's not for emergencies, right? You can invest for certain situations. Like, for example, you can invest for a house. I want to buy my first home. I can start investing today. And then, let that money grow over time. And then say, I don't know, 10, 15 years from now, the investment has grown. I can take that money and use it, to pay for a house or buy a portion or put the down payment of a house. So there's a difference between saving and investing. Investing and trading. These two, some people say they're the same thing. Even, people who are in the field will say there's no difference. And, this is for me personally, there is a difference. Okay. Trading to me is kind of like, it's more akin to, I want to say more akin to gambling to some degree. in the sense that you're trying to make a quick profit, right? You're constantly watching the stock market, and you're trying to see which stock is low, right? And you're looking for trends and things like this. And you look for something that could probably kind of cause that stock to kind of go up in value, and you buy low. And then once it goes up in value, you make money. And then you look for trends that show when the price of that stock will start to decrease, and you sell off when it's at its height, right? But that takes a lot of analysis, right? It takes a lot of analysis. And also, the problem with that is that you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? We don't know the ghaib. That's something that only belongs to Allah. And the thing about when you look at these trends and what causes the price of stock to go up and down, sometimes it's something as benign and mundane as what someone tweeted, right? Donald Trump, when he was in office, I mean, you could see stock prices just doing this. All he had to do was tweet something, right? Speak bad about it. It was just, he was very controversial in that sense. Elon Musk, right? Twitter. I mean, it was a big thing a few months ago, right? People were tweeting, I'm going to buy Twitter, and the prices of Twitter started just going up and down, right? The thing about trading is that you have to constantly watch that, or you set up different IA things to kind of look after it and kind of try to buy things when they're low and sell when they're high. Whereas investing, you're not really worried about what's happening on a day-to-day basis, right? When you invest, just like if you were to invest in your education, you don't expect to be educated overnight. You know, if you go to college, right, you at least 4, maybe 5 years, right? Investing is like that. You put your money into something that you feel it will grow, and you let it stay there until it's mature, right? So that's a big difference between investing and trading. And this one here says saving, but we're talking about trading here. So at the end of the day, what I want everyone to understand is that all those definitions we had, hopefully that cleared up some of the misconceptions. So when you start talking about this, and when people start using this language, you can kind of get an understanding of what they're talking about. If someone comes to you and starts talking about trading or day trading, you know what they're talking about. They're talking about watching the market, analyzing the market, buying low, selling high, right? When someone's talking about investing, in general, sometimes they're just talking about how you put your money away for long-term profit. When someone's talking about saving, you understand there's a difference. And when they talk about spending, you also understand that there's a difference, okay? At the end of the day, when we're talking about investing, especially when we're talking about investing in the stock market, and Brother Ashraf explained, the halal and the haram and everything else, right? There's nothing to fear, okay? And I want to say that, and I stress that because I find that in talking to a lot of people, there's so many things that come up. Of the first ones that I hear from Muslims is it halal to even do it in the first place? Investing in the stock market, right? And that's why we have Brother Ashraf to come on and kind of explain that there are different levels and everything like that. And at the end of the day, you just have to make sure you're Sharia compliant. Whatever you invest in, let's say you want to invest in a company, Verizon or whatever, you just have to make sure, analyze the company, look at their business model, look at their financial model, and just make sure that they're Sharia compliant. You can also talk to advisors, people like Brother Ashraf, right, who, or scholars, right? They have panels sometimes with, especially when you talk about financing homes and everything, who can actually say, yes, this is something you should invest in. This is something that you probably should stay away from. So that's one of the big things. Is it halal? And hopefully Brother Ashraf cleared that up. One of the things I'll find outside of that realm is the risk factor. And he did talk about that as well. My experience talking to people, I'm talking my parents and grandparents, right? A lot of them didn't invest. I learned a lot of my investment from people outside of my family, okay? And when I got older and started to invest, I started to talk to people, older generations, and I would say to them, how come you never did this? One of the biggest reasons they felt like it's too risky. You lose all your money in that stock market, right? That's, and that's kind of the way I grew up. And that is because you've always had someone who's kind of gotten involved in it, right? Didn't know what they were doing and end up losing all their money, right? So trading is very risky, right? Investing has less of a risk, okay? Trading, you're trying to predict what's going to happen. Investing, you kind of stick with some fundamentals, right? You put your money somewhere, you put it in something you trust, and you let that thing grow over time. And I'm not going to go through every aspect of these slides because of time. And also, there again, Brother Ashraf took care of this, and also brothers who will come later. But we did talk about the unseen, or the ghaib, right? And there's some ayats here. I'm not going to get into that. But in general, we don't know the future, right? So trading becomes risky, okay? Risk. We talk about risk, we have negative risk. When we're talking about money, that's mostly what we focus on is negative risk, meaning what type of things could happen with my money when it's in the market that will cause it to decrease. You also have something called positive risk, right? And these using risk are things, positive risk, most of the time we don't expect to happen, but they can happen. What can happen to your money in the market that causes your money to actually increase without you even knowing it, okay? So we have to look at that when we think about risk, negative risk versus positive risk. Culturally, one of the reasons we find investing risky is because, in America, I mean, historically, when it comes to banking and financing, some people just, people have been here long enough, there's just been a history, right? People have had land, that land has been taken away, and land's been taken away, people took it, and then decades later, people are just out of wealth that their great-great-grandparents owned, right? So there's a lack of trust with the institutions, right? And sometimes this fear and lack of trust kind of paralyzes people into doing nothing. And that's kind of one of the things that I want us to kind of get out of this way of thinking. Either you become paralyzed and you don't do anything, which is what most of my parents and grandparents did. Like, you just work a job and the money you make, you just kind of use it best you know how, right? Because we're afraid to invest. And then you have other people who kind of try to fight the system, and that's not good either, right? I'm going to do something different. I'm going to try to get around the system. That can be very risky, right? People do get around the system and they can make a lot of money doing that. But in doing so, when you talk about making a lot of money, you're also talking about a high risk. If you're making money, a lot of money in a short period of time, you're talking about high risk. And so I've seen people do that as well. You try to get around the system, or sometimes people just become paralyzed and they just work that 9 to 5 until someone puts dirt in their mouth. And neither one of those ways are really good ways, right? So Islam calls us to protect our wealth, right? We have to preserve our wealth. We try to minimize its exposure to loss. And hopefully Brother Ashraf clarified some of that. When we talk about risk, we also have to understand that calamity, anything that happens to us, good or bad, right? It's all the qadr of Allah, right? And that's one thing we have to accept. We as human beings, we try to, subvert misfortune, right? And we do different things. Some people, get involved in shirk, right? I'm gonna wear a rabbit's foot to try and keep misfortune from coming to me, right? I'm gonna do different things. Where in Islam, we understand that, the good that comes to us is from the qadr of Allah, and sometimes that good that comes to us, sometimes it was actually bad for us, and sometimes the bad that happened to us is good. So we have to take that into consideration as Muslims who get involved with this, that there is a level of risk, regardless of what the outcome is, right? You take that risk. Risk management is basically what you have to do. When you invest in something, you have to gauge yourself whether this is going to be something that I feel is going to be beneficial or not in the long term. That's an individual thing, or you can talk to an advisor. I wouldn't recommend talking to people on the street about risk investment in this issue here. We do have brothers coming on later who are advisors, and they will talk specifically about this. Tying your camel, right? I think when we talk about subverting risk, the best thing you can do is just do the things that you think will be best for you, right? You try to invest, but at the same time, right? You go ahead and you invest, but at the same time, you make sure you do things in a smart manner, okay? And when I say smart manner, and I'm talking about investing for long term, there are two things that we need to focus on. And if you don't take anything else away from my talk, take these two things away from it, right? When you invest, you make sure you are as diverse as possible, okay? Diversity, meaning you're invested in different sectors of the market. The reason it's important to be diverse is because, the stock market just tends to do this, right? one minute things are, you have, one sector is doing well and another sector is doing bad. When you're diverse and you're spread all over, right? One sector is doing bad, you'll see that your money will go down there. But if you're also invested in sectors that do well, everything kind of levels out. So you have to be diverse. It's like, something that, that people tell you all the time, don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? Be diverse and invest for long term, okay? Invest for the long term. When you do this, it's kind of like the weather, right? If it's raining one day, you don't get all worried about that, It's just raining today, right? It may not be raining tomorrow. And even if it rains for a week, it's not going to rain forever. And this is how we have to look at the stock market. There are times when the market is bad, right? A person who's invested for the long term, they don't worry about how bad it is today, right? I'm going to wait till this thing matures. It may take 10, 15 years or whatever my goals are. And that is where, they reap the reward, and you don't have to worry about constantly, whether the market is doing good or bad on a day-to-day basis. So be diverse in your investing, invest for long-term goals. I want to show you all this chart because I think it's pretty important. I don't know how well you can see it, but it's basically the Dow Jones, and this is just a way that people can kind of, look at trends in the stock market for the last 108 years. Okay, so in 1915, we see that the Dow Jones, it was kind of down here with regards to, the wealth or where it was as far as the stocks were concerned. And then a little bit later, you had a crash here, but you had a major crash in 1929, where the stock market started off here, had a little dip here, went all the way up, right? And then it crashed, right? And as we see as time goes on, it went through its ups and downs, but you see the market just still went up, got to a point, then it had a slow, steady crash right here. Everything went down, right? In 1987. Same thing happens, it goes up again, and then you have a slight crash here. 2008, subprime mortgage issue, housing and everything caused a lot of economic issues. But as you can see, it didn't go down as far as it did back here, right? And then when we look here, 2020, everything went up. It didn't really get that high, right? It got up here, but then you had a light crash here in 2020 with COVID-19. Now, COVID-19, we act like that was a big thing. It really impacted the market. But when you look at it, it didn't impact the market that bad, especially when you talk about what happened right here, okay? And this right here is where we are today. What I want everyone to see from this, just to know, let you know that there's nothing wrong with investing as long as you stay diverse and you invest over time. This is 108 years. In that period, the stock market has just done this, right? So even though you had your ups and downs, over a long term, the market just goes up. Now, some people say there is a time when the whole market will crash for good. And that's true. That will happen. But at that point, that point it's like, hey, what do you have? The whole market is gone. It's decimated. Then, that's a whole nother issue we're dealing with. But in general, for the last 108 years, the market has steadily increased. So if you or someone in your family invested back in these days and kept that wealth in the family, imagine how much wealth that person would have today if it was inherited, up until now. So just something to get you thinking about why it's important to invest over a long-term a period of time and not to worry about the day-to-day, right? So don't look at it as being risky. And, there are risks involved, but take smart risks. That's the thing that I wanted you all to take from that last section. There's another one here. People say, I don't invest because only experts do it, right? I'm not an expert. I don't really know how to do this, so I just stay away from it. And this is really not true. It's not just for the experts. Nowadays, a lot of people, most people can invest in some way, shape, form, or fashion, okay? When they talk about experts, they're talking about people who try to beat the market, okay? Now, I want everyone to understand there's a theory, there are different economic theories. One of the theories is called the efficient market theory or hypothesis. And the efficient market hypothesis, it basically says that the market itself is efficient. It runs very well. And the reason it runs well and it's fair is because everyone has access to the same amount of information. This works particularly well in the US. I can't say that it works the same way in other countries, right? I'm invested in Africa, and I can't say that it works the same way, and also in certain parts of the Middle East, but I can't say it works the same way. But in America, when you put your money in the stock market, when you have a publicly traded company, there's information that that company must give out to everyone equally. And that's what they say is makes the market, it's efficient in that sense, in the sense that one group of people or small group of people don't have information that other people don't have, okay? And if they do have that information, they're not allowed to use that information to leverage in trading, okay? That's called insider trading. Yes, you can and will go to jail if you get caught doing that, okay? People remember anyone, Enron back in the 90s, Martha Stewart, did she go to jail? Yeah, she went to jail for that. Yes, indeed. Insider trading. Someone had information about Enron, the stock was about to crash, and called her up and said, hey, Martha, take your stuff out of Enron right now. Someone on the board told her that. And and it wasn't just her, it was a bunch of people who acted upon that. And when they did that, people investigated and said, how come everybody pulled all their money out? All the top people pulled all their money out before the thing crashed. Something weird is going on here. They started to investigate and found out that people were, telling, insider trading was taking place. So that's what the efficient market hypothesis kind of does. It keeps the information fair. Anyone breaks the rules, you kind of get in trouble for that. Now, there are other theories out there as well. And I don't want to get into a big theory debate here. It's kind of like schools of thought. You got Maliki, Shafi. They got different people who, even in economic theory and in the Western economic theory, people have different theories. But this one seems to be the most, the one that seems to be, has the highest level of fidelity with regards to it holding true. All right. So basically what it says is that because everyone has the information, everyone is allowed to make good decisions. Right? And no one can hide information, okay? Warren Buffett kind of follows this theory. Warren Buffett, for those who don't know, big time investor. I'm quite sure he's probably one of the richest men in the world. I don't know what his value is now, but Warren Buffett started investing when he was like 14 years old in something like Coca-Cola he had a few pennies that he got from working for his father. And over time, he just invested in other things, but he follows this theory, right? Efficient market hypotheses. You have people who are opponents of it. And these people are generally people who try to beat the market. They feel like, you don't need to, you can kind of just look at trends, the trading, and you can beat the market, not investing over long periods of time, right? They try to beat the market. And there is this guy back in the day, he wrote a book. His name is Burton Maciel. It's called A Random Walk Down Wall Street. He was trying to show how the efficient market theory is efficient, right? In most cases. Basically, what they did was they did an experiment where they took a bunch of monkeys and they took put a bunch of stock, took newspaper cutouts, put them up on the wall of different companies, and they put them up on the wall. They took some blindfolded monkeys. They gave them darts and just had the monkeys throw darts at the wall, and whatever business they hit, someone would go and invest in that particular stock, okay? They did this over a period of time, and they said, okay, the monkey, he hit this company, okay, let's invest so much in this company. And they did this over a period of time. The idea was to see if the monkeys could beat the market. In other words, could they beat the experts? At the end of this whole experiment, what they found was half the time, the blindfolded monkeys won. The other half of the time, the experts won, which goes to show, experts are looking at trends, trying to get things at the right time. The monkeys were diverse, right? They were just throwing darts. They weren't worried about trying to get something at the right time. And over time, you found that it was about 50-50, going to show that you don't know what's going to happen. Anything can happen that can change the market, right? We have data that we can look at. They have AI that they get involved with now, and these, and they do help, but no one can predict the future. So the point is, experts don't always have to be the ones who invest. A layman can invest, but it's always advisable to find someone to help you do it. And this will have brothers who, who will come on and talk about that later. But I don't want anyone to be turned off because they feel like they're not experts. Okay. Okay. So this is another one. I don't have enough money to invest. Okay. We need to change the mindset. Most people, and there are people who are really struggling, no doubt. I'm not trying to discount that. But I would say that most of the time, the money that you have to build wealth is hidden behind your spending. Okay. Think about what you spend your money on a daily or weekly basis. I can say there's a contract I go to, one of my clients that I work with under Jacobs Engineering. You go there, I go there before we started working from home, and they have these food trucks that would come out, right, to the company. And people will go out there, some people every day go out and buy from the food truck. And I noticed that the food truck, the money that they spend is like $20 every day, $20 a day, buying lunch, just lunch. And I'm sitting there thinking like, wow, like imagine if you took $20 a day, right, and you invested that $20 a day. Man, right? But people got a little money, they just kind of, and people do this all the time, buying a cup of coffee. You go to Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts in the morning, cup of coffee, what? You put all the stuff with it, maybe $5. I don't know. I don't buy coffee. I make it at home, right? It's cheaper, right? And I save and I use the extra money to invest. Right? So the thing of it is, we just have to stop thinking like this. I don't have money. You always have something somewhere. Sometimes it just means you have to change the way you spend your money. Okay. Sometimes nowadays, with the way things are, you don't even need a lot of money to invest in the first place. Back in the day, you need to have a set amount. You couldn't start in a brokerage account unless you had a certain amount of money. A lot of these companies nowadays, they've done away with that. You can start in a brokerage account with no money. And then a lot of them don't even require you to keep minimum balances. Okay. So it makes it a lot easier. Okay. So, we just have to get out of this mindset of living rich. And yeah, someone said it. Who said it? Dying poor. That's the key. And I'm saying this, I'm sure a lot of our older people know this, but I'm saying this for the young people around here, right? You get your paycheck, you love to spend that money. You want to buy new clothes, new shoes, and everything else. But think about it. If you're young and you start investing now, think about it. All that money you buying and spending, buying, name brand things and everything else, invest it now. By the time you hit 40 years old, you probably don't even have to work. Okay. So that's important. All right. So think about this. All right. General stock market investing. And we talked about this, the $20 a day. I just did a little bit of math here, right? $20 on lunch at the end of the month, they would spend about $600, right? If you were to invest that in the stock market with today's average rate on returns, and you did that for 20 years, you would have $400,000. Okay. If you do that for 20 years. Now imagine if you did it for 40 years or 30, right? How much more you would have. And also compare this to savings, right? If you just save $20 a day, putting in a savings account, right? You would probably, after 20 years, you would have about $146,000, right? So that's why I say there's a big difference in saving and investing. And that's because of the amazing thing that money, when you put it in the right place, because it has this kind of compounding effect, right? To me, it's very fascinating, right? How that happens. Right. It's like one of my mentors told me it's like rabbits, right? If you like to eat rabbits, we don't eat rabbits here like that, but if you're from the country, right, you grew up eating rabbit, right? And that's something you like to do. Rabbits have been known to be very prolific, right? Have a lot of children. If you bought 4 of them today, right, and you put them in the right environment, and you just kind of let them, gave them food, water, and let them live, and you came back a year later, you would have hundreds of rabbits. Just compound and compound and compound. That's the way money tends to be when you put it in the right places. So everyone, think about this with regards to how you spend or how you invest your wealth or how you use your money. The key is you have to be long-term with it, right? You have to be consistent. I would say put something aside every month, invest every month, be consistent with it, and you will see the benefits over time. Starbucks is a nice case study that I like to talk about. Starbucks became a publicly traded company back in '92. And at the time, when it first opened up and became publicly traded, it was $17 per share, right? So in those days, they have this thing that kind of a calculator that breaks this out. If you would have taken $10,000, which was a lot of money, it's a lot of money today for some people, and definitely '92 was a lot of money. But $10,000 in '92, if you would have put that in Starbucks in '92, right, it would have bought you about 588 shares of Starbucks. Okay. Starbucks did so well over the decades that the management decided to enact certain what they call like stock splits, which basically allows your stock to kind of break up into more stock. That's in a nutshell what it does. So if you had 588 shares of stock because of the 6 stock splits that they did over the decades, it ended up being about 37,000 shares. So you started off with a $10,000.
Join the meeting.
Okay, someone is joining the meeting. $10,000, right? 588 shares. The splits happen. You end up with 37,000 shares. As of a few days ago, when I checked Starbucks's price, right? The price of Starbucks, it was $98 per share, which would today, with that 37,000 shares, would have given you about $4 million, $3 million. Okay. So there again, we go to people spend more than $17 a week on Starbucks, right? If you go there every day, it probably has more than $17. Granted, 10 grand is a lot, but it's just to show you how wealth works and how we need to get into this mindset of thinking like that. And I say this more so, I'm not discounting people who are middle-aged and old. You can always invest. That's one of the things I'll talk about later. But for the young people, it's very, very important, because the key is you have time, right? If you're just starting off in the world, you got your little job, you have a lot of time. You can invest in such a way by the time you're 40, you can be done, right? You can spend more time doing the things that you enjoy. Most of the people, when you look at the tech industry, a lot of people who, people who started Facebook and things like that, they were young. I can remember when Facebook became a thing, right? It's old. People say it's old now. Young people say TikTok is the thing, right? Facebook and Instagram are for old people. But I can remember when that stuff first started, right? Those people who started that, young people, they're retired now, most of them, okay? All right, so to involve, real quick, I'll get through these because I have to think, am I running up on time here? Okay, real quick. Too much involved in investing, right? It's too complicated, right? Today, that's not true. Back in the day when I first invested, you had to get a person advisor would come to your house, right? Or you had to go to their place of work. You had to do things over the phone. If you wanted to buy stock, you had to buy it over the phone, or you had to go to their office, fill out paperwork. It was very manual. Today, it's not like that. You can do a lot of these investments over your phone. There are apps. You can invest something like Acorns, for example, which is one of my favorites. Something like Acorns, you can actually, they give you a card and they actually take the difference that you have in change and they'll invest that, right? So if you go to the store, you buy something that costs $9.50, right? They'll take the other 50 cents and invest it in whatever you choose. So every time you spend, you're actually investing something, but you have to gauge that, whether it's going to be you're spending more than you're investing. Last few things here, too old to invest. This is not true. Some people say I'm too old, I don't have time, I can't reap the reward from it, so why bother? You should still do it, right? Because number one, it's always good to do. You don't know how long you're going to live, first off, right? Another thing is that I say this to people: investing it's something that it's an intergenerational thing. Usually, wealth, right? It comes because someone in the past had this idea that, hey, I'm going to do this right now and pass it on to the next generation, right? So yes, I get it. We may be older, but you can always do it. You never know. You will reap some benefit from it. But if nothing else, think about future. Think about posterity, right? Children, grandchildren, the community, right? You can invest now and build up something and, write it in whatever to give this to the community. So it's always important to think about that. And also that's a sadaqatul jariyah when you do that, right? You get it started, it's in the halal way, and you're in the barzakh, right? And all this grave, you're in the grave and all this barakah just pouring in the grave because of something that you did like this. So it's important. I'm too young. We talked about this. When you're young, you have time. So there's no reason to say I'm too young to invest, right? You have plenty of time. If you start now, starting investing now while you're young, you have more time. You're more likely for your wealth to grow that way. Okay. And don't think of it as something that only old people do or people who are getting ready for retirement. You got to stop thinking, get out of that mindset. Do it now while you're young. Last one I have is I don't know how to pick good stocks. Someone asked the question, how do you pick good stock? What stock should we pick? I would say that can be pretty challenging if you're trying to look at what are the best stock to pick. Brother Ashraf was he talked about halal versus haram. And I would recommend that when the video comes out, revisit that section or talk to an advisor, someone who knows this, that can kind of help guide you through this. But I would say in general, okay, picking stock, if you talk to an advisor, they can kind of help guide you through that. They can give you ETFs, investment funds, or whatever the case may be, and they kind of keep you diverse and do it over a long period of time. I would say this also. What I tend to do when I started is I started to invest in things that I spend money on a regular, right? I got a Verizon bill or whatever. I give them money every month, right? My thing is, why not be invested in Verizon or AT&T or whatever it is? If you're giving them money every month and the service or the product is good enough for you to pay for it every month, why not start there? But also before that, start with an investor, an advisor. And I think that's it. I don't want to, did I go over, how much I go over time? Okay, 5 minutes. All right, right on time. Alhamdulillah. So with that, any questions real quick before we jump into break? Yeah, go ahead.
There's a particular company on the stock market right now. I won't name it because it's on you to do your research. But 56 cents a share. You take $28, you have 50 shares. If that stock goes above $10, how much money have you made? So for you young people sitting here listening, for you young people, if you're under the age of 18, there's no reason by the time you're our age, you shouldn't be a millionaire. Or inshallah close to it. Because he mentioned about picking the right stock. What is one of the current trends in the society right now is electric vehicles. Okay. What powers an electric vehicle? A battery. What is it made of? What companies are pulling those minerals out of the ground to make those batteries? Okay. Oh, yeah. This is what we're referring to. So in picking the stock, like I just said, you may not spend your money, you may not have an electric vehicle. And someday when you become an adult, you may have one. Huh? Invest in something that's going to make the electric vehicle market profitable. Who makes the tires for the electric vehicle? Who makes the glass for the windows that you have to look out of? Who makes the display screens for that nice big tablet that sits right in the middle of the electric vehicle? Find those companies and see if you can afford to invest in those companies because these are the products that contribute to the EV market. That's my little tidbit that I wanted to add. It's just going to say it does not cost much. You don't have to be rich. All it takes is 56 cents to buy one share in the company that pulls the minerals out of the ocean. And if that company does well with the electric vehicle market, with your 50 shares, you'll be sitting pretty if they get over $15 each.
Yeah. I would say
I gave you a hint. It said you're pulling the minerals out of the ocean. You got to do your own homework.
I would say with that also, always remember, stay diverse. Yeah. Invest in mineral, but invest in be broad with your investment. So if the mineral market takes a hit, if you're diverse, you can always balance it out. One thing I would say about the elderly people, I forgot to mention this, is that we talked about sadaqatul jariyah. I want to say this, even put it like this, if you don't even have children, some people, young people, they want to have children. one of the best times to start investing for your children is before they're born. That's what one of my mentors told me, right? Right? Before they're born, set up something right now. So when your kids are born, they already have something, and then, you know, they just keep growing because they have time, right? Almost done. You good? You want to take a break?
Just answer that one question.
Yeah. Any more questions? Any questions online? I see a question here about annuities and options. We'll get to that. I think a brother's going to address that in general. Yes. Yeah, there's different. I talk specifically about the stock market, but you can invest in real estate. You can invest in businesses. I mean, you can invest. Brother was asking, how can we actually invest in a local business? People can get together and actually do something like that. One of the things I have overseas, I mean, I have apartments and I'm invested in some apartments in West Africa. That's a combined effort, right? So stock market is one thing, but it's not the only place, right? Real estate, and other things. Yes.
They mentioned one word, consistency. And that is mentor. How important is that for especially when people get involved?
Yes, indeed. It's for young people. That's part of the reason why we're having this. There again, this brother here, he wants to do the middle-aged or, you know, that's his focus. I focus most on young people. Right. I tend to talk to young people a lot. You need mentorship. If someone wouldn't have come to me when I was 18 or 19 years old and told me, hey, this is what you need to do, I had no clue. And the only reason this happened because my father-in-law, right, he said, if you're going to marry my daughter, you know how to manage money. So I'm going to get my financial mentor to come talk to you. So he had me come to, I was at my in-laws' house, right, at the time. He had his guy come and I sat down at the table and the guy said, here's what you need to do. And I said, okay, I'll give you. I had no clue at the time. I was a young kid. And it's just something that, you know, I talked to these people throughout the years and it's just kind of helped grow. It grew me up until now. And I just kind of stuck with it. Over time, I began to understand it. But it took mentors and people in my life to kind of point me in that direction. Right. So it's very important to have mentors.
I'll put the annuities question.
You take what?
The annuities.
You want to take it now?
Yeah,
Or?
I'll take it now, yeah.
Okay, we do have a question about options and annuities.
Yeah. All right. So, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah, for the person online who's asking about annuities. You're asking the opinion. So I don't know if it's a Sharia opinion or a general opinion. It wasn't clear. But annuities, if anyone doesn't know what an annuity is, what it is you take a pot of money, you put it into a vehicle, and it annuitized. So you get a fixed amount each month as income or revenue or what have you. So from a Sharia perspective, this is generally disliked because it involves riba. It involves that fixed return. So you have annuities who pay at 6% interest, a 10% interest return, or what have you. And from a Sharia perspective, it's disliked. Now, investors in general might say it's a good option to have because you can get a fixed monthly income going forward out of that pot of money you invested in it. But I think it could be problematic from our religious perspective. I wish this question was asked when Brother Ashraf was here. He was more of from a Sharia perspective. Like I said, I'm not sure if the person who's asking the question, Tarika, wants to know from a Sharia perspective, but it's a tool that people use. But I think from a religious perspective, we could have some problems with it. I'll take some more questions from the audience if there's any other questions. And the program right now, I know we don't have the program posted, but we have a break from now until about 4:50 when it's Maghrib, Salatul Maghrib, where we're going to have some refreshments, some food to eat. So we'll take the opportunity since you guys are here to do that. And then after Maghrib, we will resume the other part of the program where I'll talk about creating a financial mindset. And then the last presentation we have will be from Brother Hood, who's online. He will talk about investing using mutual funds through the Amana company, Amana funds. So those are two more topics to come, inshallah.
So inshallah, with that, we're going to go ahead and break here unless there are more questions. And during the break, you can ask questions. I'll be around. The brothers will be around, inshallah. Yes. I would say if you're asking me, I would say investments are necessary. Savings are for emergencies. That's the way I look at it. If you're talking about building wealth, and not just to just say I have money, right? But to be able to do something with in the future, your community, your family, or whomever, I would say investing is absolutely necessary.
I want to add to that too, because saving, there is a risk with saving. It's called inflation. So the dollar you save today, 10 years from now, is not going to be worth the same, because the market, the society, the worth of that dollar will definitely be not the same. So you want to save, but save for more short-term type of goals and invest for long-term. So earlier he said that, you invest to like save up a cash reserve, or you might want to purchase a car or something like that. Those are short-term goals where you want to get a down payment. So it's okay to save, but if you're thinking about retirement or some type of a long-term goal, you really want to invest that money because it's going to grow beyond the inflation rate. So for example, like, I don't know, 10 years ago, a gallon of milk was probably $1.75. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. But now it's like maybe $3, right? So if you save that dollar, you still have that same dollar right now, but you can't buy that gallon of milk today, as an example.
Any more questions?
Get a link for this. I have my son who's not in the area, so might want to.
Okay. There's a link that went out. You want to send it to me? All right. Inshallah, we're going to go ahead and break. I think the food is here. I guess I don't know how we're going to serve it. I'll talk to the people, but the food is here, inshallah. For those online, we're going to pause the recording. We will be back. The time will start over. Yeah, 5:15, we'll go ahead and resume. That's after slide. We'll resume it at 5:15 Eastern Standard Time.